Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, have you ever heard of a professional radio listener? I mean, somebody who actually listens to the radio like it's their full-time job. I know if you're a program director, you may feel like it's your full-time job, but here's a guy, our guest, Nick D., travels the country and listens to the radio. And he's an engineer by degree. He has some good ideas on what radio is doing, what they should do, and what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. We'll check it out next. It's coming up on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Air, featuring Playout One radio automation software, comprehensive streaming solutions, website content management, and social media tools for maximum listener engagement on the web at AIIR.com. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb that came off the top of a tower. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack here in Nashville, Tennessee, in the Telos Alliance studio. Can you tell? Yes, we're branded, the Telos Alliance studio. I want to give my friends at Telos Alliance a big thank you for giving me a couple hours off on Thursdays to work on the show, and we appreciate them very, very much. It's a fantastic place to work and a fantastic place to get your broadcast gear. So I really appreciate them, all my friends there. Hey, Chris Tarr couldn't be with us today, so we wish Chris well. Maybe we'll see him next week. And we've got a guest, though, who's going to fill the hour with some amazing stories. And I tell you, I talked to our guest yesterday, and we had a great conversation. I thought this is going to be an interesting show. We've never done a show quite like this before. And so maybe you've seen his posts on Facebook. Maybe you've talked to him in person at an NAB show. I've met him at a party in Las Vegas, and we've just had some good conversations. He's very insightful about his area of expertise. And I'm going to give you my title for him first is our guest is a professional radio listener. And more than just a listener, he's a professional observer of the industry, especially in terms of what the audio is coming out of the radio that the audience enjoys or sometimes doesn't enjoy. What are the technical aspects of the transmission? So he really, really looks after metadata, RDS, DTS auto stage, pad data from HD radio. And he's got a lot of interesting perspectives and opinions. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Mr. Nick D. Nick, welcome in. It's good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too, Kirk. Hello, everyone.
You're coming to us from Las Vegas, you said. Tell us about where you are.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm currently in Las Vegas, but I travel around the country so much, I'm hardly ever home.
Yeah. You live a very interesting lifestyle, and I because people ask, I'll just say that you told me you have an independent source of income, which allows you to travel a lot, almost completely at your whim and will. You travel to places that you enjoy being, and one of your greatest sources of entertainment and joy and maybe frustration from time to time is listening to the radio. Tell me about your love for listening to the radio.
I've always liked listening to the radio since I was a kid. So I just felt like there's a connection to the DJ and the community that the stations are in. It's just I've also been interested in the propagation of the radio waves. Like I've been into DXing on FM and AM. I'm also interested in like different content in various parts of the country.
So, boy, that's going to bring up a whole lot of questions. We've got a lot of things to talk about. I know that coming up on the show, we're going to hit a spot break first here, but coming up on the show, we're going to talk about your love for classic hits and how that is executed differently across the country, and maybe how it's
Yes.
executed similarly. We're going to talk about local radio, non-commercial. Also, there's an app that you really recommend that you like. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about technical deficiencies. And you have an engineering degree. We'll get to that in a bit, but what you notice technically about stations. And so I'd love to get, as we move through the show, some of your perspectives on, what do you find as some common themes that stations are doing wrong that they could improve, and maybe a station thinks they're doing everything right, and yet, you've overlooked this. Let's get that right, and then you will be doing everything right. So that'll be coming up. Nick D is our guest. Again, professional radio listener and observer of both formats, execution, and the technical aspects of transmission. Plus, we'll talk about DXing and interference and what he notices a lot about interference these days. Our show is brought to you by our friends at AIR, AIIR.com. And at AIR, they have introduced a new service. It is a music scheduling service that right now, it's free. So the ad goes like this. I wrote all this down after really studying and talking to Ricky Lee about this. Hey, are you tired of wrestling with clunky music scheduling software? Well, you can meet AIR's music scheduler. It's powerful scheduling, and it's simplified, and it's in your browser. Now, that means you can schedule music or correct music logs or whatever you need to do with music logs, do it from anywhere. With drag and drop clocks and reusable templates, you can build a day's playlist or an entire month in moments. You can import your existing library, or you can start fresh if you want to, and then you can assign categories, commands, and audio types, really with lightning speed. The cloud-based platform frees you to schedule from anywhere, anytime. Oh, did you forget to do something? Well, guess what? 9:30 at night, you're watching something on TV. Oh man, I forgot to schedule this or that, or I needed to insert some more Chuck Mangione, for example, who just passed away. Well, you can do that anytime. No installs, no headaches, and with fully customizable rules for artist separation, tempo flow, title thresholds, and more, you'll always hit your station's unique sound. And of course, what I love is you can break the rules if you need to. See issues highlighted in real time and get instant fix suggestions and export logs effortlessly. You can export them, of course, to Playout 1 because AIR is also Playout 1, but you can also export to Wide Orbit, to Myriad, to Play It Live, to Station Playlist, and the list is growing. So you can try AIR Music Scheduler free throughout September or through the end of September of this year, 2025. And after that, it's just $60 a month per station. So you're ready to simplify your scheduling? Well, visit air.com. That's AIIR.com/scheduler and sign up today at air.com. Thanks a lot, air.com, for doing this service. You're going to find more and more services that you need to deal with are hosted on the web, so you can actually handle them from anywhere. Just like you handle your banking now, you do that on the web. You can schedule your music on the web. It's really effective. All right. Thanks again, Ricky Lee at air.com. So we go from Ricky Lee to Nick D. Nick, all right, we got so many topics to jump into here. The first one, well, we can do whatever order you want to, but the first one that I mentioned was classic hits. Now I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of classic hit music. I'm an engineer of the 80s. I grew up in the 70s and listening to so much 80s music. Tell me about this format, classic hits, and why it's such a favorite of yours.
Well, I really like soft AC the most, but there just aren't that many soft AC stations around the country. So I listen to classic hits most of the time. I've always been an old soul. I've liked music from before I was born in 1988. I really liked 50s and 60s oldies when I was a kid. So that's moved on to classic hits from the 70s, 80s, maybe some early 90s. And I like that classic hits formats around the country are mainly centered in the 80s, with the exceptions of a few that are based in the 90s with a lot of 2000s.
Ah,
That I don't like as much. I feel like that's a completely different format.
So we're going to talk about audio processing on different formats in just a minute, but I got to ask you about a narrow genre that Kirk Harnack really likes. And if I listen to it for weeks on end, I'll start to get tired of it because the playlist is a little short, and that's yacht rock. Now, tell me
Yes.
your thoughts on yacht rock, and is it a subset of something else or is it its own thing? And I know that if I listen to a classic hit station, not everything is yacht rock. So tell me your thoughts about that.
I like yacht rock. I think it's a subset of soft AC.
Hmm.
It's like relaxing music, and I think it's a bit narrow though. It's like
Yeah.
soft AC can be a lot more varied. Even have some hits from today.
Yeah. During the summer, I've listened to the Yacht Rock channel on Sirius XM, and yeah, it gets repetitive after a while. And
Yes.
I
Oh
spent
yeah.
about 2 months listening. I have a Wi-Fi radio out in the hallway just outside my office, so I just keep it on just enough to hear what's going on. And I spent 2 months listening to iHeart's streaming Yacht Rock channel, and I on the one hand, I really love every song they play, and on the other hand, it got repetitive. You know, after 2 months, it got repetitive. I wonder how many songs are in a typical yacht rock playlist. 200, 300, something like that.
Yeah. I'd say not more than like 250 or so.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel
All right,
like
talk to me.
about 500 titles is like the sweet spot,
Okay, for any format, or for a yacht rock or classic hits format.
or most like hit based formats like
Yeah,
classic hits.
yeah. All right, talk to me about. We're going to talk several times, I'm sure, about audio processing. But you really listen for audio processing. I know you have stations that you listen to because you like the processing. Tell me about the processing you hear on many classic hit stations, and are there any call letters, any stations across the country that stand out as something that you think these guys they've dialed it in right? What do you think?
I really like the audio processing of a few stations around the country, and it makes me want to listen to them more so than to a competitor because they just sound so distinct, so unique, and brings the music to life. I like fast, aggressive processing, even like reverb, but we don't hear that much around the country anymore. My favorite station for audio processing and also for its wide variety of classic hits is a non commercial station out of the Dallas area, 88.5 KEOM out in Mesquite, Texas.
Oh, okay.
I like
KEOM.
that.
You'll. Mhm, mhm.
Yes, they play so many songs from like the 70s and 80s that other stations do not play. Like, where else are you going to hear Donny Osmond in regular rotation?
Right, right. Yeah. And there's some Donny Osmond songs I wouldn't tune away from. Sure.
Yeah. And another station I like for its audio processing is 94.9 KCMO in Kansas City, Missouri, and
Ah,
Wibbage 94.3 out in South Jersey in the Atlantic City area. Those, I believe, have Omnia 11s, and they really know how to crank it to the max.
I think that there are formats and settings for any of the top brand of processors that can sound uh, exciting and good. You just mentioned the Omnia 11, and I know I work for the company. I get that, but when I, the company provided me an Omnia 11 quite a few years ago, and it sounded as expected. This was before the Cornelius School's GeForce. And when GeForce was introduced, of course, I installed that software in the Omnia 11, and I had it sitting right here in this rack. And I listened to a number of songs that I was very familiar with, every tinkle, every cymbal hit, everything. And with Omnia 11, with Cornelius's GeForce in there, I just sat here in this chair with my mouth wide open going, oh my God, that's the way that song should sound. That's what I've always wanted to hear in my head. Do you, Nick, do you hear stations, maybe you just mentioned them, that sound, oh my God, that's the way that's supposed to sound?
Yes, those stations I just mentioned, and a few more.
Give me again the
Now,
call letters.
outside the classic hits format, there's a
Uh-huh.
few stations I like for their audio processing. I also like classic hip hop, like from the 90s and 2000s. And my favorite is G96.7 in Gulfport, Mississippi. Love their audio processing. I like that they pitch up the music a little bit, make it sound like they used to sound on CHR 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, and that's kind of a classic hip hop station.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, that brings me to a question I was going to ask you. Um, I can't say I'm a fan of hip hop. I like R&B, but hip hop is not my thing. But a few years
You're
ago,
outside the
I was
demographic.
yes, I am. Uh,
It's all
a few years
good.
ago, I was driving through Memphis, and I had a new FM HD radio in my car, and I noticed that 97. What is that in Memphis? I'm drawing a blank now. It's
97.7
uh yeah, it wasn't
Memphis.
KJMS. It was it
I'm
was it
drawing a
was the
blank too.
it was the big hip hop station in Memphis. Um and and I tuned into it, and I thought, you know, I'm just not a fan of this music, but I love the way it sounds. And by sounds, I mean I love the way the processing makes it sound. It sounded so freaking good. And then my radio,
I'll
of
have to
course,
check that out.
blended over to HD1, and it sounded amazing on the HD1. I thought I could listen to this, even though, you know, I'm not familiar with the artists, but I could listen to this because it just sounds, it tickled that thing in your ear and your brain where you go, yeah, I like the way this sounds.
Yes, it's subliminal. And like that's what I look for. Like there's some stations and formats I don't like, but I like their audio processing so I can stand listening to them. I will have to check out that station you just mentioned whenever I go through Memphis.
Good golly, I'll look it up during a spot break or something. I can't believe they have an AM, and oh gosh, hang on, I'm gonna look it up now.
I wish I
And
remembered this station.
people in the audience, I'm sure, are saying, "Kirk, it's this." Hang on, I'll find it just a second here. WHRK, WHRK 97.1, and
97.1.
yeah, I'm thinking WHRK probably features a jock by the name of Bobby OJ. Bobby OJ. You know what? I was at the HRK studios years ago, and I met what's the name of the guy who sang the Funky Chicken? Rufus
I don't
Thomas.
know.
Yeah, Rufus Thomas. I met Rufus Thomas in person at WHRK. Oh my gosh, that was probably 35 years ago. Oh well. Hey, okay. So, tell me what's another format that you really like, and you seek out to listen to how it sounds.
Well, another format I really like was electronic dance music, but radio
Oh,
has
EDM.
not really
Oh,
embraced that format
yeah.
throughout the years. However, here in Las Vegas, we are lucky to have two stations playing EDM all the time. And they've been around since 2023, so I would think they're doing well.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I don't think of EDM on the radio because yeah, you're right. There isn't much. Um, Something else that I don't think of as being on the radio, but I enjoy sometimes for a few days in a row, and that is so-called lo-fi music. Do you ever hear lo-fi on as a format?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, you know, there on YouTube there's a channel. The main channel is called Lo-Fi Girl, and the fellow who programs that, I believe, is rather reclusive and lives in France, but he's very good at uh, the song selection. And there are other lo-fi formats, and I don't know, they just don't do it for me. But this guy's Lo-Fi Girl does a great job, and I always thought it would be a great HD2 or HD3 format. It's something that I can listen to all day long and just leave it on, and it's the kind of music that your brain doesn't have to think about, but you enjoy it while you're listening to it. Um, what about other major formats like country? Um, or mix type formats or jack type formats. I'm interested in your thoughts on audio processing for those formats. Maybe well, let's talk about a mixed format. The best of the '80s, '90s, and today. What kind of processing do you think is most useful there?
I'm not a I'm not a big fan of hot AC, but I
Hmm.
think some less aggressive processing would be good for a hot AC or a mainstream AC station. I just don't like much of today's music, so that's why a hot AC doesn't really appeal to me. In fact, I used to like the AC format 20 years ago, till they started adding like too much contemporary and not enough adult music.
Ah, gotcha, gotcha. Um, Do you have any thoughts about processing for other formats? I know that in many parts of the country, contemporary Christian music is a big deal. K-Love certainly has a lot of outlets, as do Family Radio and Way FM. Do you listen to much of that, and what do you think about their chosen processing?
Like, no offense to the fine people who work at the that EMF and the other religious broadcasters, but it's just not my thing, so I don't listen to them. And
Gotcha.
I don't like how K-Love and other religious broadcasters are buying out the commercial stations and just basically making it one fewer station for me to listen to.
Ah, gotcha. Well, I think that happened in New York City. A lot of people were upset about that when K Love got a big signal there. Nick, after our next commercial break, we're going to chat about some of the technicalities of broadcasting. You've experienced plenty of spurious interference, spurious transmission, and other kinds of interference. And of course, we want to talk about metadata and how what you observe in some markets. Maybe it's competitive for metadata and people are all kind of get on the ball and do it right, but in other markets you don't find much at all in terms of RDS or pad data or anything like that, title and artist. So we're going to talk about that. We're talking to Nick D. Nick is what I would call a professional radio listener. He's like a P1 for every market. All right, that's not how P1s work. He's going to tell us, as it's nice to have somebody that's an observer and to tell you, hey, Kirk, here's what's wrong with your radio stations in Cleveland, Mississippi. You need to do this or that. And that's a perspective that's worth knowing about. Our show This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by Broadcast Bionics, and something that they have been doing for some years now that stations just keep snapping up and subscribing to and getting, and that is the Bionic Studio, which encompasses a number of different technologies and workflows and things that pop up for the talent in the studio. So let's hear about Broadcast Bionic Studio.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email, together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These can be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
You know, at Bionics, Broadcast Bionics, they've really designed everything they make to make creating good radio easier for you. Really an extension of what you're doing now, but it makes it better, especially with social media posts. Your talent essentially does what they do now, and they get more out of it. Plus, they get more connectivity and more information appearing in front of them. So check it all out from bionics.co.uk. And they have dealers all around the world. Probably your favorite broadcast equipment dealer could very well be a Broadcast Bionics dealer. It's Kirk Harnack This Week in Radio Tech. Chris Tarr has the day off. Hopefully he'll be joining us next week. And we're talking to Nick D. If you're just joining us, Nick is what I would call a professional radio listener. And his perspectives then on what he hears and what he sees are worthwhile for us as engineers to and program directors to take heed of, make note of it, and see if there's any adjustments we need to make. Nick, let's talk about signal clarity, signal purity. What are some of the most egregious things that you come across the country with regard to stations' signals?
One of my biggest pet peeves is when the HD1 and the analog signals are not aligned. I always say, like, if you don't have a Justin, you'll be a Justin.
Okay. All right. Wow. Yeah, so all right, for those who don't know, the way the whole HD system was designed, your HD1 is a programming duplicate of your FM analog, right? But HD has a total delay between the encoding delay and the receiver delay of somewhere, around 8 or 9 seconds or so.
8 seconds.
Yeah. And so typically the FM analog signal has to be delayed by that much because FM analog gets transmitted, typically there's very little delay there. There never has been. You can listen off the air. And it gets delayed in the radio while the digital HD is being reconstructed and error corrected and all that stuff before it plays out. So you got to delay your FM analog by that like amount, about 8 seconds. But it's possible for this to wander around just a bit, or egregiously, some stations never set it properly at all. Do you find that? Do you find sometimes a huge delay or huge difference?
Yes. There's some stations that I've noticed have never synced their analog and HD. And so it's annoying that if I like their format and I want to listen to them and I'm not driving through their 60 dBu, I'll have to disable the HD reception in my car radio to be able to enjoy it.
Well, you know how to do that, and I think most car radio owners would not know how to disable HD. I had a radio that you could, but you had to go through a menu to disable it. And just to be clear, what you're talking about for the few people who have not experienced HD reception, the whole idea is if HD is available, if HD1 is available, again a duplicate of the FM, your radio will switch to that HD1 and play you that decoded audio. But if the digital signal kind of falls off the digital cliff, so to speak, and it's not decodable reliably anymore, then the radio will switch back over to the analog signal, the FM signal. And if you have it all adjusted right, this transition between what analog and HD is reasonably seamless, even if your processing can be even made to sound pretty similar between the two. And so that actually, Nick, leads me to ask, on stations that are well adjusted, is it actually a little tough to tell the difference between HD and FM?
That's actually ideal. I should not be able to tell difference between analog and the HD1 audio if they're doing it right. Even the processing should sound similar.
Yeah. And that's why manufacturers like Omnia, Orban, and others, they make FM processors that have an HD section, but the texture, the part that's manipulating the audio as far as its texture, is common. And then the audio splits to the FM section for the FM things and the HD section for a different kind of limiting, so that they both kind of sound like they're processed similarly, even though the final output is a little different, one for each transmission media. Wow. So if stations don't have this, now let me ask you this: if there is a difference between the two of just a few milliseconds, where if you really listened, you could hear it, but it doesn't bother you, does that bother you? If there's just a little difference in the two?
Like if it's a few samples off, I may not be able to tell, unless maybe
Yeah.
I notice a flanging sound when it switches between the FM and HD1.
Yeah.
But if it's more than, like, say, a tenth of a second, that's definitely noticeable.
Yeah. So when the rhythm changes, right? Well, hey,
Yeah.
the drums just came in quicker. Well, that's because it just switched from one to the other. Okay. What about your observations about other HD channels, HD2 and 3, and some stations doing an HD4? Are there things that stations do that are good, and are there things that stations do that technically are annoying with those upper HD channels?
Well, I like that HD2s and HD3s sometimes have, like, unique formats not heard anywhere else in the market. Like, say, if a station switches its format, they put the old format on the HD2. I like that. I also like when the stations let the PD or the engineer run the HD2 to their heart's content and play whatever they want. Like, my favorite HD2 in the country is KXBS 95.5 HD2 in St. Louis, Missouri, run by Mike Couchman. It's an EDM format. The HD1 is a religious station, but I listen to that as long as it comes in whenever I'm driving through the St. Louis market.
Wow. Okay. Interestingly, St. Louis is where I first heard AMHD done well. And I had heard it done, I thought, rather poorly in a few markets. But when I got my HD radio in my Toyota 4Runner, I made a sales trip up to St. Louis. And I was actually visiting KFUO, which is an FM station, and they have an AM that belongs to, I guess, the Lutheran seminary there. And I was interested in seeing them because my dad actually went to that seminary. But when I was listening to them, the AM, it flipped over to the AM HD. And actually, I was on the phone in my car at the time, and I thought that I was listening to their FM because the AM HD, it was a talk format. So I wasn't listening for, great separation and a fine placement of instruments. But I stopped the car and I thought, when did I tune this to their FM? And then I realized, it's their AMHD. How about that? Have you ever heard AMHD that sounded good?
Oh, yes. My favorite AMHD in terms of the audio quality is 820 WWFD, The Gamut, out in suburban Washington, D.C. And that, I believe, is the first experimental AMHD, full HD in the country. And that's how I think it should sound like. I couldn't even tell the difference between the AM and its former translator. It was just that good.
Yeah. Yeah, we've interviewed them about that station.
Dave Tolaris.
Yeah, but now aren't they on the gamut? I thought they weren't transmitting any analog. It was all HD.
Yes, it is full HD.
Okay.
Yes, it is full HD.
Okay. All right. Well, now one thing
used to have a translator and analog.
Okay. Understood. So, and hey, if you don't want to change topics, that's fine. But I do want to get to talking about metadata. Many stations. We were just talking about HD. I tune into so many HD stations that on the metadata tag on my radio it says asterisk HD radio asterisk, and this is the default from some of the importer exporter software. And I'm thinking, Jiminy Christmas, can't we at least put the call letters there? Until you figure out how to do the dynamic pad data. Tell me your experience and what you see on HD stations. Are you seeing them doing it right? Or are you seeing a lot of them not paying attention?
Most of them put the call letters as the HD pad. Some of them put the slogan, and then there's very few around the country that just haven't done anything. It just says HD FM.
Yeah.
I like it when they have the title and artist also displaying. Now, what really irks me is when they sell that space to advertisers, usually injury lawyers. Like, I want to know what I'm listening to if I hear a song that I like. I don't want to see another commercial. And it also baffles me when they put the same commercial, like for an injury lawyer, and then over the air, they run a spot for a competing lawyer. Like, that does not make sense.
No, it doesn't. That's pretty bad traffic control there. So I've only set up a couple of stations with pad data, and I think they call it something. I think they've changed the name of that. I mean, they call it PSD now. But anyway, I'm going to keep calling it PAD, Program Associated Data. And I was always told that it was difficult to set up PAD on HD. That engineers of ordinary intelligence like me really couldn't do it very well, and so we ended up buying a piece of software called Meta Radio, and that solved our problem in 20 minutes. I mean, 20 minutes after I installed it, we had the HD1 plus our HD2 plus our HD3, three different programs, all supplying title artist into our importer exporter from Nautel, and bam, it just worked. It wasn't that complicated. So I can highly recommend, don't try to solve this problem yourself. Get a third-party piece of software that intermediates this and easily accepts your title artist information from your automation system, and then easily, properly puts that into your importer exporter. Nick, do you have any experience with this kind of software or stations that are using it?
I do not, but I've used the TWiRT RDS encoder and Magic
Sure.
RDS. I've set those up for some LPFMs around the country. It seems pretty simple. I also, speaking of RDS, I like when stations use the RT field for the title and artist, and the PS field for their slogan.
Now, remind me, PS, is that the little 8-character field?
Yes.
Okay.
And
So
RT is the bigger field, and
Well,
PG is the format name.
Mhm. Well, that's exactly what we do on all of our stations. We have about 19 FM stations, Larry Fuss's stations in Mississippi, Arkansas, Hawaii, and American Samoa. We do exactly that, because that little scrolling 8-character display, I don't like that, man. My wife's car doesn't have the RT, the radio text display. It only has the PS display. And we listen to local stations here when we're driving around, and you have to wait so long to find out who's the title and artist, because they also stick in their station slogan and the frequency and blah blah blah. So you're not watching the road, you're watching the radio. Is this which artist is this Garth Brooks, or who is this? And that's distracting. So yeah, the RT display is really good. Are there other fields in RDS that are worth worrying about?
Well, in the US, we don't really use the AF field, alternative frequency, but in Europe, they use it a lot more. I wish that there was a more useful implementation of it in the US, because there's many stations that have multiple frequencies, like translators or simulcasts, and listeners would not memorize all the frequencies of the stations they're listening to as they travel around, so they just tune away once it fades out.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, in the last 20 years, local radio has had a number of competitors pop up, right? So we've got Sirius XM radio, and lots of formats to choose from, and they control the transmission end and the receiver end. So you're likely to have a well-controlled experience with Sirius XM. And then if you're somebody who listens to Spotify or other music services in your car, you may very well have a display because you've got CarPlay or the Android equivalent that's giving you title artist plus album art. When I recently sold my one of my cars, but I had put an aftermarket nice big display in there, navigation display, and it had CarPlay, Apple CarPlay. So when I would listen to my own station's streaming, and our streaming service puts in the album art for you based on the title and artist that you're providing to them, that was all very nice. And yeah, that doesn't happen on FM. Oh, except we haven't talked about DTS Auto Stage. Do you have much experience with DTS Auto Stage?
Yes, yes. The car that I have been driving around the country for the past several months has a DTS Auto Stage, which gets the metadata from not from the stations themselves, but from the DTS server that the stations push out their metadata to.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows like it doesn't show the call letters; it shows the actual station name, which the listeners would identify with, and the title and artist song may not come from the RDS, but would come from the DTS feed. And it also has a station list where I can list the formats and the slogans and even the logos of each station that the car radio picks up. However, there's a few faults to it, and I wish that DTS would respond to listener complaints about like incorrect station data.
Mm-hmm.
And also, um, when there's abnormal propagation like eSkip or Tropo, it does not get the PI code from the station, but instead it uses what's stored in the database. So it might show the wrong station's information when I'm listening to another station like over 100 miles away.
Yeah. So and I had not experienced DTS Auto Stage until we bought our stations in Hawaii, and we bought a station car, and the station car came with a nice stereo, and we bought it because it came with HD, but it also came with DTS Auto Stage. And frankly, all of us at the station were a little scratching our head, like, what is this? Where's it getting the wrong call letter information, but the right artists? And then we kind of figured it out, and then we realized, oh yeah, somehow we are sending information to DTS Auto Stage, and we had the same problem too. It took literally weeks of trying to contact the people at Xperi to get our information corrected. But once we did, it's correct. Something that amazed me was the fact that this little bit of data that's going with back and forth in and out of the car. It's based on cellular technology, and it's I wouldn't say it's free, but it's included at least for the first year or two or whatever of your ownership of the car. And then at some point you do get an email that says, hey, if you'd like to consider, if you'd like to continue these services, whatever they are, mapping or live traffic or that kind of thing, you'll need to pay us. And what have you noticed in financially speaking with your car?
Now, I permanently rent cars and I switch out vehicles like about 3, 4 times a year just because I drive about 10,000 miles a month. So I was lucky that the last car I had DTS Auto Stage, and I was able to pretty much test it more than their own engineers did, driving it all over the country and noticing things about it.
Yeah. Yeah. On DTS Auto Stage, do you get album art, or is it just title and artist and station art?
Yes, it shows album art, and the stations don't even need to transmit that data because it comes from like the DTS database. Like if they just transmit the titles and artists, it'll get the album art and then it'll push it to the car radios. And I think that's a neat feature, especially for stations that don't have HD with the artist experience.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're some of your listeners have DTS Auto Stage, they can experience have a higher level of experience even if you're not transmitting HD. So that's kind of a cool thing. All right. We've talked about metadata, and we haven't talked much about streaming or about the RF interference that we keep saying. I keep saying we're going to talk about, but we got to take a quick spot break here. We got to hear from one of our sponsors. And by the way, I'm talking to Nick D. Nick is what you'd call a professional radio listener. Nick drives all over the country, has 10,000 miles a month. Holy shamoly, and listens to stations all over the place, taking note of their format, how fun they are to listen to, local contesting, local information, and some technical aspects as well. Nick is a degreed engineer, so he gets the technical aspects of it. I'm Kirk Harnack on This Week in Radio Tech, and our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Henry Engineering. Henry Engineering, and I know they make a number of different products, but I'm going to talk about this one again because I'm such a fan. I have bought now a total of about 6 of these back UPS units. And I know it seems like a simple idea, and some people think, well, I could build one of those. Well, yeah, you could. But why would you when everything you need is in this one? And it just works. It works well. It's got well, here's what it does. Many times you've got equipment in a rack, and this equipment only has one power supply. Now, I've got racks where I've got servers that have 2 power supplies, and I've got a few other pieces of equipment that have 2 power supplies. But I've also have some critical gear that only has 1 power input, 1 power supply. And I don't want that to go off. And of course, they're plugged into a power strip that's powered by a UPS, but there's times when the UPS fails or you got to change the batteries on the UPS. And so I think I've had stations taken off the air almost as often by a problem with the UPS as I have with the power actually going out at the station or at the transmitter site. So the back UPS just takes 2 power inputs. You plug the output of your UPS into one of the inputs on the back UPS, and you plug the other input on the back UPS into just normal, 120 volt power from the power company before the UPS. So you've got 2 power inputs coming into it. Now, normally the back UPS will supply output power because it's got a duplex 120 volt jack, plug on the back of it. Normally you provide power out that, and it'll come from the UPS. But if the UPS fails, or if it gets wonky, if it chatters, if it goes up and down, if it becomes unreliable, the back UPS will switch to the commercial power. And it has a delay on the return back to the UPS power until the UPS power output is stable. So if you got to change batteries or do a battery test, some of these UPSs do a battery test, and it takes the UPS offline. Well, that's no good for staying on the air. So the back UPS will absolutely help you out in these situations. It'll make you reliable. It certainly has helped our stations. I've had to change batteries. I've had to do battery tests. I've had to do some replugging maintenance on the things that are hooked up to the UPS, and the back UPS has saved my bacon. We didn't have to go off the air at all. It's been great. And I just buy one of these for each rack. The back UPS handles 15 amps of current at 120 some volts, and off you go. I just love the thing. Check it out. And the place to get it is from Broadcasters General Store. Why? Well, because they have great prices and really nice people to deal with. The website, bgs.cc, bgs.cc, or you can call them like I do at 352-622-7700 for Broadcasters General Store. Couple people making a big difference for us broadcasters. BGS, Broadcast General Store, and Henry Engineering. Thanks, Hank Landsberg, for doing what you do for broadcasters. All right, I'm Kirk Harnack. It's This Week in Radio Tech. Chris Tarr has the day off. We're talking to a professional radio listener. Don't try this at home. It's for professionals only. Nick D. Nick is in his Las Vegas office, and I'm sure he's going to head out when are you heading back out on the road again, Nick?
Tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, I should have expected that.
Yep.
Um,
Heading to the Windy City.
oh, Chicago.
Yeah, heading to the Windy City, Chicago.
What stations do you like to listen to there?
Over there, of course, 87.7 Me TV FM,
Oh,
the soft
okay.
AC Franken FM there. And I also
Franken
like
FM.
104.3 Jams and Throwback 100.3 for my classic hip hop fix.
Yeah.
Not really a fan of how WLS sounds anymore, now that they've modernized. Like, I don't want to hear Lady Gaga on classic hits.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Man, if I could tell you a quick story, I'll try to keep it 1 minute. Years ago, when Frank Foti came out with the Omnia AM, it was the Omnia 4.5 AM, maybe it was, or maybe it was the Omnia 5A. Anyway, an Omnia AM processor in the same physical box as an Omnia 6. But it was optimized. The software was done for AM. I was invited to go to WLS, the big 890, 89 WLS in Chicago, and demo this processor. And I got to Midway Airport, got my rental car, had my Omnia AM with me, turned on the radio, listened to WLS, and I thought, oh my goodness, they sound really good. Is this going to be competitive with whatever they're doing now? And they were using the Orban 9100 processor. When I got to the transmitter site with Warren Schultz, the engineer, he showed me what they were using, and I said, Warren, man, you sound really good. We'll try the Omnia, but man, I don't know. So we put the Omnia in. Warren was very helpful. We ended up, I spent probably 45 minutes adjusting. We ended up putting it on the air, did a few A/B comparisons. What we noticed was, on all programming, the Omnia was about a dB louder, as shown on their RAM brand meters, and phone calls were more intelligible, and that was a little surprising. I did not expect that. So we left it on the Omnia, went to lunch, came back, and the long and the short of it was, at least back then, this would have been in the early to mid 2000s. They ended up staying on the Omnia processor. So anyway, good success story. That was kind of cool. Nick, what's been your experience with stations changing processors, either for the better or for the worse? What's been your opinion?
Like, I can tell when the audio processing changes. I've even notified a station that I noticed the audio processing sounded much better, and I complimented them for it. And they're like, "How did you know we just installed an Omnia 11?" That was Wibbage 94.3 in Atlantic City a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
So, I can tell when the audio processing changes, and I'm sure other listeners could subliminally notice it, but they may not know why it sounds different. They just
Yeah.
know that it sounds different.
Yeah.
And then, of course, heard stations change their audio processing for the worse. And I'm not really a complainer, so I'm not gonna criticize their work, because what sounds worse to me might sound better to their engineer or PD or whoever set it up. But just keep in mind that the listeners notice changes in the audio.
Right. Let's talk about RF. When we were setting up our show the other day, you mentioned that you heard a number of stations, more than you'd like to hear, that seemed to have spurious transmissions, things that just didn't sound legal because they may have been interfering with others. What have been a couple of your more egregious experiences with stations operating maybe out of bounds?
I know I've heard stuff going wrong on stations, they transmit spurs 200, 400 kilohertz away from their main frequency, or even on a completely different frequency, or intermod between two stations at the same transmitter site. And when I complain about those on engineering groups, and I say that I've noticed that in my travels, they're quick to dismiss me, saying that it's my car radio. So therefore, I look at it on a spectrum analyzer, and I can see quite a distance from the transmitter site that there is indeed a spurious transmission on a frequency they're not supposed to be on. So I would think that's conclusive evidence that there's a problem and it needs to be fixed.
Yep. Yep. And it is always, even with a spectrum analyzer, it's easy to, many spectrum analyzers, it's easy to overload and create spurious stuff within the spectrum analyzer itself. But if you're far away and you've got to crank up the gain just to get a meaningful signal on the spectrum analyzer, probably it's not being overloaded. And it really,
Yes.
at least it's worthwhile to check out more and more definitively. And I will say that as an engineer, sometimes it's difficult to get an accurate reading from a spectrum analyzer that you can be confident in. But there are techniques to get this done. There are pads available. You can go in and you can use an antenna that's padded way down. So there's things you can do. And your location is important too. But if you're seeing it on a spectrum analyzer that you're carrying with you, which is kind of impressive, that and
Yeah,
miles
I
from the
do.
transmitter site, yeah, you're seeing this, and yeah, it's easy to dismiss. I've dismissed. I've done engineering work in West Tennessee for two stations, and one of them had a spur, had an intermod from their AM that was interfering with another one of my customers, and I heard I may have dismissed it the first time. Then I had to take it seriously. I had to, maybe that's possible, and I did some math. Oh yeah, if that co-located AM got into the FM exciter, it could create a spur that is really close to the complaining radio station on FM. Sure enough, it was. And it took a lot of grounding because they were co-located. It took a lot of creative grounding to completely get the AM out of the FM causing intermod. So, yeah.
And I've noticed that for an AM and translator in Kansas on 1190 and the translators on 102.9, and I've heard intermod products plus and minus some 1.19 megahertz from 102.9 and confirmed that on the spectrum analyzer. So it was the AM getting into the FM exciter and then being amplified.
Realize also that sometimes intermod is simply caused passively by a dissimilar metal connection. And I bring this up because in Memphis, one of the FMs is a grandfathered superpower FM. So I don't remember if it's horizontal or vertical, but one of the planes of transmission, it's 300,000 watts. And it's WMC FM. The air route traffic control center in Memphis, Memphis Center, if you will, or the Memphis airport would sometimes complain, "Hey, you guys are coming in on our aviation radios." And it turned out that the problem, the several times they complained, the problem was never WMC FM. It was always a rusted, dissimilar metal connection that was acting like a diode, a nonlinear junction that was, and it was in the, close enough field, a mile or two away from the FM station to cause that. And on their aviation radios, which are pretty narrow and pretty sensitive, right? They got to talk to airplanes that are 100 miles away. So, it can be difficult to solve, but if somebody complains, you at least got to check it out. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but I want to talk about an app that you love, and I haven't downloaded it yet. Nick, tell us about the app that you like to listen to streaming with.
Well, for streaming with, I like Infinite Tunes, but for just discovering over-the-air terrestrial stations, I like the Radioland app, which is developed by a DXer. It shows like the field strengths of FM stations in your area.
Oh,
like
okay.
using
Okay.
the Longley-Rice method, and also shows a map of the coverage area and the terrain profile between my location and the transmitter site. So it's really useful for DXing, and I can like punch in the call letters and see exactly how far I am from the transmitter. Or I can like look at all stations on the same frequency within 500 miles and then figure out which station is airing a country format on 103.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7, 3.7, 7,
This is amazing. You know what? I've had this app before and I forgot all about it. Shame on me. But here is Nashville, where I am, and WFSK is listed 88.1, and they're not real strong. They're just a 2-bay antenna on a dorm building at Fisk University. But then there's some other stations here. Wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, and
Now
I like
again,
that. I understand what the field strength means.
sure.
Yeah, I understand what the field strength means, but the average listener does not. So
Well,
it's
at least
more
it shows
so
you.
for the professionals.
It shows you on a graph, green, yellow, red. So you get even if you don't know what you're doing, you can at least tell green is probably good, yellow's marginal,
Yeah.
and red is, well, good luck with that. Wow, this is great. Now this doesn't let you listen though. This just tells you what you can listen
No.
to, right?
Yeah. It just lets you know like what's out there over the air. I like that
Well,
better than the DTS AutoStage interface. But then again, I have an engineering background. I understand it.
I am so close to WSIX FM that the predicted field strength here is what was it? 112 dBu. I'm 2.38 miles from the
wow.
transmitter site. Well, but now
Yeah.
it's what the app. Well, you said it was Longley Rice, but I'm actually behind a
Yes.
ridge, so I don't know that if I would go, a quarter mile up the hill from my house, I'm sure I'd be just getting beat up with the signal. But where I am, I'm below a ridge, so it may or may not take that totally into account.
Or it might be line of sight within like a few miles.
That is such a great app, and you can even slide up and down the FM dial right here, or you can just
Yep.
scroll by frequency here. That's Radio Land. Radio Land. I have it on an iPhone. Do you know if it's available for Android as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then for listening to streams, you mentioned a different app. What was that?
Yes, Infinite Tunes.
Infinite Tunes.
OO Tunes. It's not run by like iHeart, Odyssey, or TuneIn. It's independent and it aggregates the streams from like every station, and the developer keeps it updated. I've had that app since 2010, since I got my first smartphone, and I use
Good
that
deal.
almost exclusively for internet streams.
We will put a
Now,
link to that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
when I was speaking of like streaming radio, I feel like there should be a unique one platform that the masses can use to listen to every station, every terrestrial station in the country. And I like what iHeart and Odyssey just did, and that they've integrated the Odyssey streams onto the iHeart Radio app. But then again, it's still controlled by iHeart Media. I wish that it was like independent and that they wouldn't be monetizing the streaming app. It would just be a way to listen to internet radio without any corporate backing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, along those lines, since years ago, probably 12, 15, maybe 20 years ago, I thought this would be a great service that the NAB could do for us. Now, that on the one hand, it seems like something they should do. Like they set the standard for the design of the broadcast cart, right? And that worked for a long time. It seems like the NAB could have done an industry app for audio streaming. But I guess that didn't happen. So,
I believe they
tell you
tried
what.
to use the FM chip in smartphones, but that didn't work too well.
Oh yeah. That's
I
kind
forget what the name
tough.
of that app was.
Well, there's some countries like in India. I think that did work out pretty well for them for some years. I don't know if it still does. And since data has now become relatively cheap on cell phones, that it's easier just to stream and get the audio that way than to build an FM tuner into a smartphone. I'm not sure. There may be political reasons as well. I'm not speaking to that, but certainly from a technical point of view and a monetary point of view, it's better for most of the parties involved just to let you stream the audio. But hey, at least nowadays, many, if not most stations are streaming. it may be hard to find. You may need a different app. You may need, one app or another. There may be confusion. If you ask, the she who shall not be named over here in the corner to play a particular station for you, good chance it'll pick the wrong station unless that station has a skill, has an Alexa skill. So, hey, Nick, we're going to be right back with a final word in just a minute. And Nick, I'm going to need a tip of the week from you. Oh, shame on me for not mentioning that earlier. So if you can, during our commercial break, think of a tip of the week for us to look at. We got plenty of items to put in our show notes for today, so people can follow up on some of the things that you've mentioned. Our show this week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends at Angry Audio. Angry Audio. They make this Rave audio console. And I follow Angry Audio on Facebook. Maybe you could too. And they show pictures of stations that have installed the Rave audio console. You should check it out. You check out their website and see pictures of the Rave console. This is a small analog console. It's not AOIP. It is strictly analog, but it's built to the highest standards. And I mean that, highest standards. The inputs and outputs on the back are most of them are Studio Hub connectors, so they're RJ45s, balanced connectors. There's also XLR connectors for your mic inputs, so you can plug up to 4 mics into it. So the first 4 faders are mic level or line level switchable. And then it's got a fader for codec and a fader specifically for phones. So it produces mix minuses for those items. It's got what they call aircraft quality buttons, switches that, are good for at least 100,000 button presses. The faders are high quality sliding faders. The meters, easy to see from across the room. And if you look at this on your screen, you see the top of this thing, the nice bent metal. That is it is heavy duty. It feels like it's going to last a long time, because it will. This console was designed by Mike Dosh at Angry Audio. Mike designed consoles for PR&E. He designed consoles for Axia. And now he has designed this beautiful little analog console called the Rave console. Of course, it does things that other, cheap consoles may not do, like give you tally light for your on-air light, give you speaker muting for your speakers. It's got a great monitor section and a headphone section. And it's just check this thing out. From any broadcast equipment dealer, in fact, I just talked to a guy today who he was installing a Rave console that he got through his favorite dealer, Jim Offerdahl, and you ought to check it out. The Rave console from Angry Audio. You can read all about it. The website is angryaudio.com, angryaudio.com, and you can buy it from your favorite dealer. Hey, the other people to talk about here is Max Connect. And a lot of times we talk about Max Connect's wireless options for their 4G LTE prioritized data that works when other cellular services don't, because it's on prioritized data channels, fixed IP address, and all that. Or Max Connect's U.192 product that gives you stereo FM audio out of computer programs. But what I also want to mention to you is what Max Connect can do for you from a technical perspective, from a technical help perspective. So a lot of times we busy engineers, we may have more projects than we can do, and we need somebody that we can trust to take care of, hey, I need a new remote control system installed at the transmitter site and hooked up correctly, and let me read it on my phone or at the studio. In other words, I need it done right, and I don't have time to do it. Or maybe technology has passed you by a bit and you don't have time to catch up on a particular project, like maybe you need a new studio built or a mic studio. Maybe you need a music performance space built. And hey, engineers, you don't have time to do it. You got other stuff you're working on. Maybe you need a transmitter installed and that's not your bag. Maybe you need a studio built and that's not your bag because you're a transmitter guy. Well, Max Connect has technical services, and they will travel. Now, they're mostly in the eastern U.S., but they will travel certainly to the western U.S., and they will build studios. They'll install transmitters. They'll install remote controls from something simple to something quite sophisticated. And they can really do it all. I have brought Max Connect in on a couple projects myself to bid on the project and to give guidance to the customer and to complete the project on the customer's timeline. So I highly recommend that if you need a little help, if you know a station that does, hey, maybe you're a contract engineer that already takes care of 20 radio stations, and you don't have time for that guy in West Undershirt, Arkansas, to do his new studio or replace his transmitter. Call Max Connect. They will absolutely take care of you and make sure it's done right. The website, Max Connect. I know it's spelled funny. MAXXKONNECT for Max Connect. Josh Bone has a great cadre of engineers that do work under the Max Connect banner, and they will do good work for you. All right, let's see. It's just about time to go. Nick D has been our guest, professional radio listener. It's great to hear Nick's perspectives from the road, visiting all the towns that he does. 10,000 miles a month. Nick, do you have a tip of the week for us? What's something we can take away and maybe put to use?
I feel like radio should focus on what the listeners want instead of assuming that the listeners want what they're providing. I've noticed with most of the people who I travel with, they don't like to listen to the radio. They prefer Pandora and Spotify. I feel like that's just a lifeless AI stream. If I want to stream radio, I'd rather stream a distant terrestrial station that I like. But one thing that radio's really turned off listeners with is the short playlists and the 10-minute stop sets. People just don't have the patience to sit through 5-10 minutes of nothing but commercials just to hear a few songs and then more commercials. And also devalues the advertisers, because who's going to sit through that stop set and pay attention to each ad?
Yeah. So that's falls in the realm of programming, and of course the usual way that stations have tried to increase their revenue is to sell more ads, and but they only have 24 hours in a day, so that means cramming more and more into bigger spot sets. And you're right. There's a point at which, man, that as we say, that dog don't hunt, and it drives listeners away. And thank goodness I don't have to write the checks at my radio stations, but it can be a problem. There's some technologies that do help us run radio stations cheaper, and yet at the same time, we can use those technologies to keep our sound, to keep our information actually localized. I hope we're doing that at my stations. I know stations that are doing that. I know stations that aren't doing that. So yeah. Shorter spot sets, that's for sure. Nick, I appreciate you being with us. You're off to Chicago, the Windy City, and I hope you enjoy.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I drive a lot around the country, and I would love to do a road trip with a fellow radio enthusiast or someone in the industry.
Yeah.
Because I think those are the best. Like when someone actually gets what I'm doing, they're in the industry, they understand what's going on. Just hit me up.
Well, and we can put do you have a website or contact information that we should put in our show notes? I'm not sure.
You could just put my tag me on Facebook.
Okay, that's it. That's a great way to connect with people. Is that you can control the spam.
Just reach out to me on Facebook.
Okay, Nick,
chances are I'll probably be driving through your market sometime within the next month.
We'll put your Facebook profile link in the show notes. Nick D has been our guest, and it's a refreshing break from some of the super technical talk that we do, just to hear the listener's perspective. And at that, a professional listener who listens to a lot of radio. Nick, you want to take a guess as to how many hours of radio you listen to every week or every month?
It's probably more than a full-time job.
Okay. Maybe more than 8 hours a day. Wow. All right, Nick, we got to run. Hey, Nick, don't hang up. We're going to grab a picture of you here shortly. Thanks a lot to Suncast for producing today's show. Thanks to you, our viewers and listeners, for being here as well. We've got a great show coming up next week as well. In just a second, I will tell you about that. Oh, yeah. Dave Anderson is going to be with us talking about moving studios and having it actually be kind of easy to do. So I can't wait for that. And hey, in 2 weeks, we're going to be live at the Texas Association of Broadcasters. Thanks a lot for joining us. And thanks to Suncast. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.